Hey everybody, it's GoblinX and welcome back to the Lost Caverns of Ixalan Early Access event. In today's video I'll be playing my first sealed event of the brand new format, so thanks again to Wizards of the Coast for the promotional Early Access account, but without further ado, let's bust open these packs and see what we get to play with today. Alright, and it looks like all of our rares are overlapping in 3 different colors. They're all in green, black, or red, which is definitely what you want to see in your sealed pool, so that is pretty nice. Starting off, we have Growing Rights of Ixalan, a great commander reprint. This is a reprint from the original Ixalan, and it is fantastic in slower, multiplayer-oriented formats. Not super good in limited, just an okay card if you have some good synergies for it, like if you can spit out a bunch of fungus tokens or something to flip this really quickly, but generally speaking, it's kind of slow card draw in the front half, and then by the time you have 4 creatures on board, you've probably cast most of your hand anyway, where you're not getting that much of an extra benefit out of the additional mana from the Cradle of the Sun, so just an okay card for sealed. Next up we have Cosmium Confluence, 4 and a green for a sorcery. This is a great card for a cave-oriented deck. Caves are a new non-basic land type, and almost all of the non-basic lands in this format are caves, so this will be dependent on how many decent caves that we opened up in our sealed pool, but if we have some of them, this is going to be a nice flexible card. Mana ramp, being able to pull out a bunch of caves, put them onto the battlefield tapped, or we can just use it as a big creature, turning one of our caves into up to like a 9/9, because you can target the same cave 3 times in a row if you want, so that's pretty fun there. We've also got a Terror Tide here out of black. This is just a board wipe kind of sorcery, but you can't use this as a board wipe immediately. You have to fill your graveyard a little bit, but there are a lot of ways to do that in this format. This format is a very graveyard-centric kind of set to go with the whole Lost Caverns theming. Descending into the cave, you're filling your graveyard, stocking it up with stuff. So with some self-mill cards, this can work pretty well in the late game as just a massive board wipe. Then we have a Souls of the Lost, another card that wants us to fill our graveyard with a bunch of stuff, so it does depend on the amount of self-mill and just other decent ways we have to fill that graveyard, but this can be absolutely massive for the mana cost. We've got a Squirming Emergence as well, which is going to be a great reanimator spell late game and a very weak one early game. So while it is a 3 mana card, you don't really want to treat this as something you're constantly casting turn 3. So I would put this at the top end of our curve and imagine this is something we're casting turn 8, turn 9. But at that point in the game, we can reanimate almost anything in a dedicated Descent deck. And last but not least, the best rare in our sealed pool, Polani's Hatcher, is just a ton of stats for the mana cost. A 5 mana 5/3 that gives all of your other dinosaurs haste, gives you 2 0/1s alongside it, and at the beginning of combat on your turn, you can sacrifice one of those 0/1 eggs to turn it into a 3/3 dinosaur instead. So the turn you play it, if you play it in your first main phase, then when you go to combat, you've spent 5 mana to get a 5/3, a 3/3 haste, and a 0/1. So even if your opponent immediately has the removal spell for it on their next turn, you're still leaving behind a 3/3 and a 0/1. So this is an incredible, incredible card. Obviously, if it isn't dealt with, then you've gotten a 5/3 and 2 3/3s worth of stats off of your one spell. Incredible rare. So let's go ahead and take a look at the sealed pool as a whole now. I usually like to start in my sealed events taking a look at the multicolored and colorless cards. The multicolored cards could have some signpost uncommons that give us some clear directions to build around if we have decent cards in those colors, and the colorless cards will show us how much mana fixing we have towards splashing in some stuff. If we want to try to get all our rares in this deck, that would be green-black splashing red, most likely. So looking at our multicolored spells, we have a Master's Guide Mural, a great card for a blue-white artifact deck. This shows off the craft mechanic, which is another fantastic graveyard mechanic in the set. So with the craft ability, You can spend the craft mana cost at sorcery speed, as well as exiling a card from the battlefield or graveyard of whatever type it says. So with this one, you can exile an artifact from the battlefield or your graveyard and spend 7 mana to transform this into the Master's Manufactory, which can spit out another 4/4 every turn that you've played an artifact. So this is a really, really nice blue-white artifact sort of build around there. And it's not that hard to craft with artifact, especially once you have 7 mana. You're probably going to have an artifact in the grave by then, but even if you don't, there are definitely some artifact tokens in the format that you could exile from your board. We have the return of treasure tokens, as well as the new map tokens that allow you to explore. The explore mechanic letting you look at the top card of your library, put it in your hand if it's a land, and surveil it, as in put it back on top or into your graveyard if it is not. Now we have Bartolome del Presidio for Black-White Sacrifice, another great build-around card there. We've got the Great Mistake over here, the 5 mana 6/4 Vigilance Menace. It's just an incredibly large, scary threat up front, and if you can fill your graveyard with 8 permanents, then it can come back once as well. We also have Akawali, the Seething Tower, which is very nice to see, considering all of our rares are in black and green, so nice to have that build around uncommon in the color pair as well, if we get a lot of ways to mill ourselves, and that's already what all our rares want us to do. We have multiple cards with Fathomless Descent. Those are the cards that get better based on the number of permanents in our graveyard, like our Squirming Emergence here. And then, of course, we've also got the Polani's Hatcher that we've already looked at. So solid multicolored stuff, some cool things and some other color pairs, but with the way that our rares are ending up, it looks like we are most likely trying to do the green-black thing, splashing in a Polani's Hatcher, and we'll see if we have some decent fixing for that. Looking at our colorless cards now, we have a Buried Treasure, which is basically 2 mana to play a treasure up front, but it does pay for itself later by letting you discover 5 from your graveyard. Another new mechanic to the set, a very fun one. It's a nice little card draw mechanic where you're going to flip cards from the top of your deck until you hit something with mana value 5 or less, and once you hit that, you get to cast that spell for free. So it's very high variance. It's like spinning the roulette wheel and seeing how powerful of a spell you're going to randomly cast, but at worst, it is always going to at least draw you a card, and the vast majority of the time it's going to cast that card immediately as well, so pretty solid mechanic. Then we've got a Compass Gnome here, which is solid fixing, putting whatever land type we need on top of our deck, be it a cave or a basic land, so that can help splash in a Polani's Hatcher. And then we have Careening Minecart, which is a pretty great card. It's very easy to crew it with a crew cost of only 1 power, and then it's a 3 mana 3/3 that spits out a treasure token every time it attacks. Very hilarious flavor on this thing with the treasures just flying out of the minecart because it's just ripping its way down the tracks at light speed. So love the flavor of this card, but I also think it is quite good. There's also a Cartographer's Companion here. This is just going to be a 3 mana 2/1 that comes with a map token, which is fine filler for basically any deck. Works pretty well with some of the mechanics in the format where there's some cards that can sacrifice creatures or artifacts for value, and this gives you 2 of them with your companion and your token. There are some cards that want to fill your graveyard, and the explore mechanic you're getting off of the map token helps you do that. And there's some cards that want to like craft with artifact, and this helps you do that as well. So a lot of little cross synergies that make this a decent filler card for most decks. Now we have a Sunbird Statue. This is going to be a slow mana rock, a 3 mana mana rock for any deck, but it can fix our mana to splash in our red dinosaur. It also has the added craft ability. Once we don't need its mana anymore, we can just exile a bunch of stuff from our grave. In our deck, it would probably be 3 different colors of cards, but even then, we get a 3/3 Flying Vigilance Haste out of it later in the game, which is pretty nice. Then we have a Disruptor Wanderglyph, 4 mana for a 3/4. Whenever it attacks, exile a card from your opponent's graveyard. That's super filler. And then a Runaway Boulder. If we're really low on removal in our main colors, this is your solid colorless removal spell to fill out the deck with. So we definitely have the mana fixing at our disposal to do some splashing, even if we don't have mana fixing in our main colors. But let's go ahead and look at all of our colors individually and rank them by power level, certainly hoping that green and black are the best colors, but we want to do our due diligence and make sure there's not just an incredible like white blue deck in here. Maybe we don't want to be completely tied to our rares. So looking at our white, we have one or two pretty premium cards. We have the Cloud Guard, which is great for spitting out 2 bodies off the 1 spell. And the Adaptive Gem Guard has been pretty impressive with the amount of treasure tokens, map tokens, stuff like that that's randomly sitting around. You can actually get these kind of tapper effects going relatively often, so that's pretty cool. But most of our other white spells are pretty mediocre, pretty filler on the mana curve, and there's not a particularly high quantity of them. There's 0 removal spells in the color, 0 bombs, so there's a couple solid cards, but no big reason to be in this color. Next up in our blue, we've got a really awkward mana curve, so we want to pair this with a color with some good early game plays if we go in this direction. Not seeing anything tremendously exciting. I do like the Council of Echoes at the top of the curve and any deck that can fill its graveyard well, so that you have 4 permanents in there, so this does bounce something when you cast it. But most of these other cards are decent for their mana costs, but definitely a lot closer to filler. I have been impressed by the Frilled Cave Worms as well in some dedicated Descend decks, because it's not that hard to get to Descend 4 when you've got a lot of good ways to enable it, like the Sage of Days kind of creatures that can just mill you 3 the second they hit the board if you want them to. But not a huge fan of these non-creature spells either. Unlucky Drop's a little overcosted, Song of Stupefaction's not great. There's like Double Pirate Hat, which is not doing much. Yeah, not a lot when it comes to the blue spells, no big reason to be here either. Checking out the black now, we have a large quantity of black spells, as well as 2 premium removal spells with 2 copies of Bitter Triumph. This is an incredible removal spell at uncommon in this format. 2 mana for an instant. As an additional cost, you have to discard a card or pay 3 life, but you're getting an incredibly efficient way to destroy any target creature or planeswalker. So double Bitter Triumph is an awesome thing to see in our black. If we end up being a slower, grindier deck, we can also run Malicious Eclipse alongside our rare board wipe, so that we have multiple ways to clear the board against more aggressive strategies. So that could be pretty cool. And then of course we've got some decent filler creatures along the curve. I like the Skullcap Snail a lot because it gives you your 1-for-1 value the second it hits the board, and anything it does from then on, be it chump blocking or getting sacrificed to an effect, is just gravy at that point. Deep Cavern Bat, another card with a solid enter the battlefield effect. Yeah, some decent creatures on curve, definitely some filler ones in this deck, but for the most part, we've got some really high quality non-creature spells and a few pretty high quality creatures. Black is looking quite nice. Taking a peek at the red here, we have 2 Geological Appraiser, which might just be my favorite uncommon in the format. This thing is insane. 4 mana for a 3/2, but when it enters the battlefield, if you cast it, you discover 3. So this thing is going to be a 4 mana 3/2 that casts a 2-drop out of your deck for free on average, and sometimes you get lucky and you also hit like a 3 mana spell off of it, then it's insane. We also have pretty good removal in our red. We have 2 Rumbling Rockslide, which are great removal spells in slower matchups, as this is a 4 mana sorcery speed removal spell, so definitely not as efficient as our black removal, but it can still kill pretty much anything, which is cool. Pretty low creature count in the red, and our other red spells are not that great, like just some combat tricks here. The Pickaxe can be solid for getting treasure tokens for fixing, but these cards definitely not as efficient as the Appraisers and the Rock Slides here. So red looks pretty solid, but hopefully our green's pretty good and we can go green-black at the core splash in the red. The only thing that's a little sad about that is we can't really splash in the double red Geological Appraisers unless we have really good mana. And last but hopefully not least, we'll take a peek at our green spells here. We do have that Cosmium Confluence, as well as a Growing Rites of Itlamok here. As for the creatures, though, some Kin Callers, some Herald Guides, just a bunch of cheap creatures. Tendril of the Micro Tyrant does work as a 7 mana win condition. If we get to 7 mana, we start turning all our lands into 7/7s and beating down, so that's pretty cool. The Capybara here is pretty good with some Descend synergies if we're milling ourselves trying to fill that graveyard, so that's cool. Poison Dart Frog is great fixing. Yeah, green looks pretty solid. It's definitely more of a support color, not a ton of incredible late game things going on here, but I think it looks good enough to probably jam a bunch of rares here. Maybe we go red, black, splash green though. In the end, I think that could be a thing, because then we get to play the double Appraiser, the double Rock Slide stuff in the main deck up front. Could be a place to be. So another peek at the colorless cards for fixing. Again, the Compass Gnome could play the Sunbird Standard and the Minecart here. Don't know about the Buried Treasure, but maybe we do have enough fixing to just full-on play all three of these colors and play some double red spells here. Yeah, I still think we're going to be a Jund deck, so let's put the Jund cards in, let's put in the multicolored cards and the colorless, and let's cut our non-green, red, black stuff. So this is a 73 card deck right now. We get to cut 33 cards out of here, so we have tons of options. So when it comes to caves for the Cosmium Confluence, we have 3 total. 2 hidden Necropolis and 1 hidden Nursery, and that's every cave in our sealed pool. Might be a small enough amount that the Confluence is just not actually great at that point. So that drops 1 rare out of here. The Growing Rights is already just not that exciting by itself. Yeah, I could certainly see black, red, splash green instead here if we drop out the kind of green rares anyway. And then we just splash in the Emergence, the Akwali, and Polani's Hatcher. I think that's probably reasonable. Still need to cut 18 more cards to get there. Let's see how much removal we can have here if we just play our best, most efficient removal spells. We'll play 2 Bitter Triumph, for sure. Probably want 2 Rummeling Rock Slide. And at that point, with 4 pretty efficient removal spells, I don't think we want the Runaway Boulder. Fungal Fortitude is also kind of a dirty trick. I prefer the Ancestor's Aid as a trick, because it also gives us a treasure token for our splash. Canonized in Blood can get a lot of +1/+1 counters over time, but it's just 1 +1/+1 counter a turn, and then once you have 7 mana, you get a single 4/3 flyer. Not that impressed by either half of that card. I think it's kind of inefficient. Fanatical Offering, that's fine card draw. Could toy around with that for now. Don't think we're aggressive enough to want the just shut off some blockers and cast a spell at random thing of the Daring Discovery. So let's drop all that. Puts us at 53 cards now. Still plenty more to cut. We might just not be a combat trick kind of deck in general, because we're going to be a little slower, a little grindier, trying to fill the graveyard for these big Fathomless Descent spells. So maybe just don't even play the Ancestor's Aids. The Sunfire Torch is also a little bit awkward removal, a little bit slow. Sorcery speed removal, and you have to attack with a creature to actually crack this thing and shoot something for 2. I think I prefer the Idol alongside the double Triumph, double Rock Slide, and then that's just enough removal already. Especially with a board wipe like Terror Tide here. Eclipse might get cut here. We'll see what our stat lines look like. If we have a bunch of 2/3s and 3/3s that would survive this thing, we might play around with it, but otherwise I think that's fine to cut. Probably do have enough fixing to not need to play the Buried Treasure. Dedicating that to any fixing here. Yeah, I kind of want to keep all these in for now. But I'll put that Malicious Eclipse to the side for now. Alright, so creatures. We've got 48 cards, 19 creatures right now. So we can definitely cut a few of them, but we should probably cut a little bit more non-creatures. So we have a Goblin Tomb Raider, which is great for aggressive decks, so when you can really get a streamlined early aggro curve. This thing is 6, so I think it's going to be really good in draft. I don't think this deck is going to have a particularly streamlined curve, though, to where that's going to be super scary, so maybe that's a decent cut. Freebooter as well, just okay value when it dies, but it's just a 1/1. I do like the Cavern Bat, the Skullcap Snail a lot. Souls of the Lost is going to get big in the late game. Sunshot Militia can stack up into a lot of damage relatively well with just some stuff sitting alongside it on the board. Like if we spit out a bunch of treasures off a pickaxe or a minecart. Definitely like the Compass Gnome here for the splash. Screaming Phantom is great at filling our graveyard for descend spells. Akawali is a great descend spell to splash in. I like the Companion and the Sunbird Standard as well for the fixing. Brood Rage Mycoid, so a 4/3 that makes a 1/1 fungus that can't block every time we have descended, so any turn in which a permanence card was put into our graveyard from anywhere. So that means if we discard a permanence, if we sacrifice a non-token permanence, or if we just trade off a permanence of some kind, or mill one. So a lot of different ways to use this, but it is important that it says a permanent card specifically, not just a permanent, so it does not count tokens, even though tokens do technically hit the graveyard before they vanish from existence. They don't work with the descended mechanic. I think I still want to try this thing out. I think we have some ways to use it. Obviously, if we mill every single turn, we'll trigger that descended stuff, and that'll be pretty good. Vito's Inquisitor. I don't think we have great sacrificial fodder, but we've got okay ones for that. I'm definitely playing Double Appraiser. Nar's an okay card because it trades off and it always draws you a card when it dies with that Discover 3 ability. Strider's probably okay as well. Big sturdy dork that you can get some extra damage with some treasures or maps sitting around on the board. Yeah, I think I'm just cutting some of the cheap cards here, like cut these 4. Still need to cut 4 more cards. Don't think Eclipse looks incredible in here. I probably will cut this in the end. And still 3 more cuts to make. Could drop the Fanatical Offering. I think that's one of our weakest non-creature spells. Hopefully enough removal to drop the Idol as well. 3 mana for 2 damage at instant speed. It's a bit overcosted. This makes up for that by letting you craft it later into an equipment, but the equipment isn't very exciting either. I'll drop these 2, and then 1 more cut to go to call it a deck. You know, with the full-on board wipe in this deck with the Terror Tide, I think I'll cut one of these slower removal spells. One of the rock slides will go for 3 removal spells and a board wipe. Hope that's solid enough here. Yeah, I think that's a fine compromise. Drop a rock slide and call it a deck here. Alright, here's a look at our completed deck list for today. We're on a black-red splash green deck, so kind of a full Jund pile here. Just a bunch of solid cards in these colors, as well as our biggest bombs. So some of the best cards in this deck are cards like Polani's Hatcher, that spit out a bunch of creatures for the mana cost. Some Geological Appraisers that spit out 2 creatures most of the time. At least going to be 2 spells every time we cast these for the 4 mana. And some pretty solid interaction. We have 2 Bitter Triumphs for really efficient removal, and a Terror Tide for a late game board wipe that could be really sweet there. We've got a ton of fixing to get this deck really rolling, with some treasure tokens off Careening Minecart and Diamond Pickaxe, as well as Compass Gnome, putting whatever land we need on top, Sunbird Standard, adding a mana of any color, and then turning into a 3/3 Flying Vigilance Haste Bird in the late game. And yeah, that is kind of the deck here. Some Jund mid-range stuff, as you do in your sealed decks. Looks like a pretty fun one. Without further ado, let's head into the gameplay and see how it does. Alright, and here we are for game 1 with an excellent hand. Obviously, we're looking to find a green source for the Polani's Hatcher, but Souls of the Lost into Geological Appraiser's already pretty good. We'll just discard a Gold Fury Strider and make up for the lost card advantage by getting a 2-for-1 off Appraiser and a 2-for-1 off of the Hatcher. Alright, opponent takes a mulligan, and we'll start things off with a Swamp. Red deck from our opponent. Here's our Souls of the Lost. Discard that Strider. red-white deck from our opponent. A lot of cards in that archetype can tap 2 untapped artifacts or creatures to get some value. So they can accrue a lot of value without even having to like attack or anything, which is kind of neat. Drawn to a Bitter Triumph. That is gonna be nice later in the game. One of the things I really like about the spell is when you hit it late game, when you have more lands than you need, you can start just holding on to your lands. So you can discard one to the Bitter Triumph to add to the number of permanents in your grave, which would buff our Souls of the Lost and any of our other Descend cards. So Bitter Triumph has been a very, very nice spell. And of course, if you just need to kill something, you can always pay the 3 life in the early game. Right, we are at our 4 mana now. Let's appraise some stuff. See what we get. We get the Compass Gnome to put the green source on top right on time. We love to see it. Unfortunately, I don't get to do the tapped green source. Actually, no, I have to do the tapped green source. Maybe it was worth putting 1 forest in here just so we could have an untapped green source in this deck. Now that I think of it. But yeah, I mean, I have 3 green cards. They all cost a single green, so I decided to just have 1 green source in this deck. But maybe I should have 2, so I have the cave, and then I have an untapped forest. Or maybe I should just play a forest over the cave. Either of those could be a thing. Either way, this game's definitely not going to be ending super fast here, so we have the time to play the tapped land regardless. Let's kill this Gem Guard. It's going to be a massive threat, and I don't need the extra land, so we can clear that out and jam in for a bunch. Our opponent is now down to 13. But Gem Guard is one of those cards that just sits there and gets bigger and bigger and bigger. It's super scary, with some random artifacts sitting on the board like their Stone Tree. Stone Tree's a fun one. They can craft it later as a 5/5 for 6 mana. They'd have to exile their Captivating Cave from the board right now to do it, though. Got a death-touching little Poison Dart Frog, and a Glimpse the Core to pick up a forest from their deck and put it into play tapped. Drawn to a Rock Slide for removal. Let's drop our Hatcher here. Get our 3/3 Haste Dinosaur. And send in... They probably trade the Death-Touching Frog with our Souls of the Lost, I imagine, as the Souls is going to get bigger if they keep trading with our other creatures. No, they're going to keep the Frog around, so they must need that for some mana fixing for something else. They are at 6 life facing a very large board, so we'll see what they got here. Seismic Monstrosaur, very big blocker, but we've got a very big Rock Slide to clear the path. They block the 5/3 and take lethal. And they're just going to concede already. I guess they are dead on board because this egg is going to also be a 3/3. So they can block a 5/3, a 3/4, and take 8 damage total. So 1-0 heading into game 2. Here we are now for game 2. We need to hit 1 red source for Appraiser, 1 green source for Hatcher. But I think this is still definitely a keep. We find the red source for the Appraiser, so we've got a great curve. Phantom into Appraiser or Companion into Appraiser. Our opponent starts with a Paleontologist. So it's a nice little mana dork that can also keep recasting dinosaurs from their graveyard later. So that's pretty good. Very solid draw for us. We get the Diamond Pickaxe while I don't have anything to do this turn anyway. So we'll get the Pickaxe onto the board and probably use that to get a treasure token to cast our Hatcher later in the game. Okay. Well, let's get the second red for the Appraiser. And I'm actually going to play the Companion over the Phantom here. Might get them to not attack with the Paleontologist if they're not using it for mana. Oh, they're just going to immediately removal spell it. Well, that also makes me much more happy to have played that than the Phantom. Way better if they removal spell our 2/1 on the ground than our 2/2 in the sky that also has a good ability. And now we do as you do. We discover 3, get 2 spells cast this turn. 3/2, and a Sunshot Militia, which immediately gets value. Poke for 1. Gnar is big enough and scary enough. I think we need to trade these here. And we'll just see what they discover into. This is an insect horror, which is helpful. If it was a dinosaur, that'd be pretty bad, because then they can recast it with Paleontologist. So, good to see that it is not a dinosaur. Ooh, buff it up. 7 power? Yep, that would trade into both my creatures. Then they discover just the 1 time. Then we drop a Phantom, equip it. Yeah, I mean, I think we do take the 2-for-1 trade here. See what they discover. What is that? Oh, Soul Cleaver? Oh, Lord. It's a legendary equipment. Equipped creature has vigilance, and whenever any of their artifacts or creatures are put into the graveyard from the battlefield, they get a +1/+1 counter on equipped creature. That is terrifying. Okay. This takes 2 to equip, so I can play the Phantom and equip it, or I can play the Mycoid and try to descend with the map token. I'm just going to try my best to guarantee a Polani's Hatcher next turn by just doing this. Because if I play the Mycoid and I sack the map, then if I don't draw land next turn, I can't play the Hatcher, because I'd have to spend 2 mana to equip it to this or the Fungus. And then I'd only have 4 mana up. I'd have 3 untapped lands and 1 treasure token from the pickaxe. So, this way, no matter what, well, not no matter what, if they don't kill the Phantom, then we can cast the Hatcher next turn, regardless of our draws, whether or not we find the lands. Alright, they're just going to pass the turn. Well, let's declare an attack to get a green source. And then suppose I'd actually rather play the Mycoid for now, because I want to be able to get one of my eggs to turn into a 3/3 the turn I cast the Hatcher, and in order for that to happen, I have to do it pre-combat, but obviously I can't do that here, so let's declare an attack to get a treasure, and mill ourselves 1, hopefully hit a permanence, so that the Mycoid makes a fungus. We do hit a permanence, and then we'll just play the Mycoid and crack the map here. And leave that treasure for a future turn, for playing the Hatcher next turn, I think. I guess I probably should have used the map pre-combat. Oh, it's when any artifact or creature, not even just theirs? Oh, snap, that is really good against treasures and map tokens and stuff like that. Well, we explored into the green source, so now I don't even need the treasure. Okay, they're just going to use the Paleontologist to exile our stuff from grave. That's actually pretty relevant against us. We're not going to be able to do any of our descent stuff. I mean, we can do our descended triggers like the Mycoid, but not going to get our cards that care about having like 8 cards in our graveyard. That's never going to happen against this. Luckily, though, they still have no dinos in grave, so they're not getting their value. Ooh, got them to use their instant speed Join the Dead removal before we cast our bomb rare. I think we're pretty happy to see that. And yeah, now they're tapped out of instant speed removal, so we know we're going to get at least 1 3/3 off of this thing. So we jam that bad boy out. Get our 3/3. Milled a land for descent, although they have killed the fungi. Drop a land. Pass. Yep. Just trying to race 1 Paleontologist that's going to keep getting bigger with the Soul Cleaver. This Paleontologist got hands. Chupacabra Echo, something that's -2/-2. Alright, that doesn't kill anything. Well, it kills our egg, which is like killing a 3/3. Yeah, that is decent. It's quite solid for our opponent. But now the Hatcher's just a 5/3 with no extra abilities. Well, it still does give our other dinos haste. So the Spike Tail comes out with haste thanks to this. So never mind, it actually is relevant still, which is nice. And now I have the mana to play it and Bitter Triumph in the same turn, which is pretty gross. I think I just saved the Bitter Triumph because, well, if I cast Bitter Triumph, they're dead on board. Otherwise, they go block, block, take 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, go to 1. Yeah, no, let's just try to kill them on board. They've got 1 green mana to try to survive here. If they don't have a spell they can cast, they are dead. They block a single 5, 6, take 14 damage. They do not have a 1 mana spell. We are now 2-0, heading into game 3. Here we are now for game 3. No black source for the double triumph unless I draw a creature for the pickaxe. We also don't have a black source for our black spells in general. I think I have to mulligan this. I don't think I keep a pickaxe hand with no creatures for it anyway. Also stuck off of a core color. This hand's definitely better. We get rid of the emergence because it's such a late game play. I mean, it's pretty good with the Phantom milling us every turn, but it'll still take a long time to get there. Ooh, very good turn 1 play. 1 mana 1/1 that explores, that is immediate value. Since they had a land on top, it's literally just a 1 mana 1/1 that draws a card when they play it. Which is phenomenal. Now a Sunshot Militia turn 2 and they are curving out over there. Let's drop the Phantom, which is going to fill our graveyard for the Terror Tide. And that's probably going to be our way of trying to stabilize this game with our opponent curving out on us and us being down a card, thanks to the mulligan. Unfortunately, they have the Torch to just kill the Phantom immediately. And now it'll be really hard to fill that graveyard. Because we're just going to have 1 permanent in it, which is not enough to kill a 3 toughness card. Now we have nothing to put the pickaxe onto either. Guess we get to 5 mana for the Strider, and we will. Not going to rock slide the Militia with a Terror Tide in hand. Alright, slap a blowgun onto the Scout and hit us for 3. Alright, at least they kind of ran out of big spooky threats there. We get a turn of a break here. 1 turn off. I'm seeing more scary stuff. They had a forest in hand and exiled a mountain here, so could just be flooding out over there, which gives us definitely some breathing room. Burning Sun Cavalry, another small card for the Terror Tide. Ooh, and a Poison Dart Frog. Hold on. This could go really well for us. This will be our 2nd permanent engrave. We can kill all the 2 toughness or less cards. Can't kill the Militia yet still, even if the snail goes to grave. Militia is just a great way to ping for damage no matter what. The tap effects here. So you get a 2-for-1 kill here. Otherwise, I just rock slide the Militia and take 4. Because they equip here. So we go to 8. But then Terror Tide still wouldn't wipe the whole board till we have another permanent engrave. Because then they could make this a 3 toughness card. Yeah, I think I do need to just cash this in. Now they jam us for 2 a turn. That's it. Alright, well, I can take the turn to rock slide the Militia, or I can play the Strider. If I play the Strider, it doesn't even block this thing because of the death touch from the blowgun. And this thing has 4 toughness with that on there. Could also just go for RNG. Spin the wheel on the Discover. I feel like it's Rock Slide, though. We top deck a land, we play Strider and equip it at the same time. Next turn. Try to stabilize by discovering and being a little bit ahead in card advantage that way. Oh my god. Well, that was a good draw after we use our removal spell. Now I just take 5 a turn, so I die in 2 swings. They can also just tap it to start dealing 2 to me once I establish good blocks for it. Oh my god, alright, well those were 2 premium draws in a row. 5 drop threats. Now a Death Touch trampling attacker. Gotta hit something immediately here, the game's over. We do have a lot of removal in this deck though. Well, not a lot. We've got Double Bitter, Triumph being the really good ones. Companion does not do it. Death Touch Trample still kills me. Yeah, I can't attack in profitably at all. Yeah, we just get Death Touch Trampled here. Dang. So, obviously if I held on to the Rock Slide, we would establish a Strider with a Pickaxe on a future turn, but I would have taken another 2 there earlier. I'd be at like 8 right now. Then they jam out the Altisar and I would have Rock Slide that immediately, and then they'd play the Veteran and I'd still die to the Veteran. Obviously panned out pretty poorly that I did the Rock Slide, but I think that was a decent risk to take when our opponent was just playing off the top at the time. They just hit 2 big threats in a row, so even if we played it really tightly and conservatively with the Rock Slide, we'd get rolled there in the end by the big Veteran Death Touch Trample combo. Here we are now for game 4, 2-1 currently. It's a very, very solid hand. We have early interaction if we need it. We have the Sunbird Standard to have all our colors. And in the late game, once the Hatcher's in our grave, alongside our Bitter Triumph, we can flip this thing as a 3/3 Flying Vigilance Haste. So it remains relevant when we no longer need it for fixing. There's an Explorer's Cache alongside a Seeker of Sunlight, which is going to be big. Probably Bitter Triumph the Seeker soon, but for now... Whenever a creature control the +1/+1 counter on it dies, put a counter on this thing. And Explores a sorcery. Yeah, I think I'm cool just playing the Snail this turn. Save the Bitter Triumph a little bit here. For something that might be bigger. Because if they play like a 3-mana creature next turn, right, they can play a 3/3 and then make it a 4/4 off of the cache. Ooh, made them exile a real spell, the Unlucky Drop here. Nice thing about the Seeker of Sunlight is they can just dump all their mana into it if they don't want to do anything else. Just keep exploring for value and putting counters on it with the Explorer's Cache. It's definitely an option. So we're probably going standard into Hatcher here. Just speed run towards that. There's a River Herald Guide. Come on, land on top, land on top. Oh, no. One of the biggest bombs in the format. All the gods are wild, wild cards. This one is a 5-mana 6/5 trample. If it deals combat damage to us at all, they get to flip a bunch of cards from the top of their deck and cast a creature and land for free. Just put them right onto the battlefield. And if we kill this, it just comes right back to the board once they have 10 permanents. Which should not be that hard for them to do. They already have 6. Yeah, this thing's insane. They need a couple more mana for it at least. That is the saving grace for us. So I think I need to save my Triumph for that to slow it down. Which means now I can't use removal on these things. But I can play a 5/3 and a 3/3 next turn, so that's going to be a lot of blockers. Trade those both off into their attacking creatures to buy some time. And then do a lot of Discover 2-for-1s later in this game. to try to claw it out here. It's going to be an uphill battle, but we're definitely still in this game. Disturbed Slumber. Turn a land into a 4/4, force me to chump. Alright, that's fine. That's the only thing the snail was going to do anyway. Down to 9. Yeah, I don't hate losing my snail there. It was just going to chump at some point regardless. So now we have a 5/3 and a 3/3 on blocks. And a 0/1 chump blocker even if the Hatcher dies. So 3/3 onto the 5/3, 5/3 onto the 2/2 here. If the Hatcher does not die, this is a huge way to stabilize a 5/3 and 2 3/3s on blocks. Our opponent is missing land drops, which is also really helpful towards keeping them off of their god. Not only does it keep them from casting their god, but it keeps them significantly farther away from the 10 permanents to flip it back onto the board if we manage to kill it. So now, whenever they do cast the god, they probably won't have 10 permanents, hopefully. And they won't be able to immediately put it back on the board. Alright. They do find a land off of the Explorer from the Seeker of Sunlight, so they are 1 land away from the god. But no attacks. That means we will turn this into a 3/3 as well, and we've got blockers all set up. I can play a Geological Appraiser and hold up Bitter Triumph to cast during their end step on their god. So that is the plan, I think. Let's Appraiser pre-combat and see if that changes what I want to do, based on what I hit here. Get a Careening Minecart. Do like the card. Alright, I've got a 3/2 and a 5/3 on blocks still. I think I just send in the 3/3s. Plus, if they blow up one of these cards with a removal spell, I can respond by tapping it to crew the minecart and still have 2 blockers up. So feels pretty safe on the defensive here, while still jamming in for damage. Explorer again, they did not naturally hit their land, but they did find it off the Explorer. So 1 more turn until the god hits the board. And at this point, we just have enough blockers even to not be that worried about the god, because the Hatcher has just popped off as the S-tier bomb that it is. So, super scared of their god, but honestly, our Hatcher is just as scary of a card. Thing is insane. Alright, here's the trade. Gives them a counter on the Explorer's Cache again to put elsewhere. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. I'm going to try for it here. I'm going to try for the lethal. I guess I play this instead of the Gnar, because it can still crew the vehicle, and we get to rip a card out of their hand. It's all sorcery speed, big dorks. We're good. Alright, take the god and hit for 14. Alright, very lucky game for us, very rough game for our opponent. They just missed a lot of pivotal land drops there, hit a bunch of really expensive cards instead as their draws. So we are now 3-1 heading into game 5. Here we are for game 5. This is going to be a keeper. Awkward to have to play the tap land turn one, because I'd love to just get the pickaxe mana out of the way. But if we top deck a land, so if I go nursery into gnome into pickaxe, then I can play the pickaxe and equip it in the same turn for 3 mana, so that's probably the curve, gnome then pickaxe. Yeah. Unless I drew land naturally, then we could play the militia instead, but since we didn't hit a land, let's just guarantee that land. Find a swamp over a tap land. Oaken Siren from our opponent. Let's start getting mana. Could play the minecart, but If I play the pickaxe, I immediately get a treasure token this turn, instead of just set up to get it next turn. So I can get 2 treasure tokens, one this turn and one next turn, instead of just the one next turn. Hermetic Nautilus. Alright, so they can block the gnome, but we'll still get another treasure token and it won't die, so I'll still attack with it here. And then we probably drop Geological Appraiser. I imagine that is the play. Let's see what we hit. Cartographer's Companion, not bad. Could crack the map right now off the treasure, but I think I'd rather leave it. Jam in with the Vigilant Oaken Siren, and drop a 1/1 Flying Lifelinker and a 2/2 Flying Ward 2, the full-on blue-white flyers deck from our opponent. This one can exile one of their creatures or artifacts, return it back to the battlefield to abuse some enter the battlefield effects. So they can keep getting planes, I guess, off the clay-fired bricks. I think that's the only enter the battlefield effect they have. They can also protect stuff from removal. So, Bitter Triumph, pay the ward cost could be a thing here. I'd probably just attack with everybody for now, since can't really block basically anything on their board anyway. I guess the companion just dies to Nautilus, but everybody else gets in. Sure. Double block, trade into the Flying Lifelinker here. Or I can kill it for free while killing the Nautilus if I let them keep Abuelo. Let them keep Abuelo. I have 5 mana total. I spend 2 on Triumph. 2 on Militia. Keep 1 of the treasure tokens. I don't hate that. Getting a 1/4 out of the way is kind of a big deal here. Go for damage. They're down to 15 now. Life totals are even. Poke me with the Oaken Siren for 1. And Abuelo for 2. Never mind. Just the Siren it is. We're down to 14. They just holding up the Abuelo mana to get the bricks back, gain some more life, hit a land. Yep. Gain some life, hit a land is how they choose to spend the turn, which means we've still got excellent attacks on board. I'll have 5 mana up after I get my treasure here. Could play the Gnar post-combat. Be fine, but I also like keeping the treasures for the Sunshot Militia, so maybe we play a minecart for even more treasure production in the future. Don't hate that either. Send all these bad boys in. And they do just trade Abuelo off into our 3/2, that is fair. Alright, I think we do something I probably should have done a long time ago and actually swamp cycle this Spike Tail, I imagine, right? But then Minecart or Mycoid, both are good at giving us more tokens for Militia. Minecart gives us treasure every turn. Mycoid starts giving us funguses that also can get tapped towards Militia. Yeah, I descended because I put a Spike Tail in Graves. Let's go for the Mycoid. I do have to spend all my treasure to do it, but we get a fungus. immediately, which is nice. Oops. Look on the militia there. Ooh, threefold Thunderhulk. Incredible bomb rare. It's a 3/3 and 3/1/1s. They can sacrifice any artifact to put more +1/+1 counters on it. And when it attacks, it creates a number of 1/1s equal to its power. So it makes like 1,000,000. So that is bad for us. They're at 10 life here. 1, 2, 3, 4. I can shoot for 4 if I just tap my whole board. Or I can send in with the team and clear out some of this stuff. They'd have to triple block the Mycoid. I think we can at least attack with the Mycoid for sure. I think we attack with the Mycoid and the Gnome, because attacking with the Gnome gives us the treasure, which is big. But don't send in the 1/1s here. Yeah, they can only kill one of these without losing the Thunderhulk. So they triple block the Mycoid and take 3, probably. Yep. Oh, I could have moved the pickaxe over to the Mycoid to make it 4 toughness, and then they would have to lose the Thunderhulk to kill it. That probably would have been better. Although, I guess this opens up to letting them block this way so we can keep the Mycoid and trigger Descent. So that actually does still work pretty fine for us. One, 2, 3, 4, 5 damage off of Militia alone. Next turn if I tap my whole board. There's a Petrify on the Militia, so I can't use its ability anymore. They don't have enough mana to make this 6 toughness on board. They need another trick to do that. So we will get the trade and discover. That feels great. Hit a flyer. That also feels great. Force that Oaken Siren to get a jump in here. It's the back half of the bricks. Oh, +1/+1 to the whole board. That is a big deal with all these 1/1s. Oh, and they had the archaeologists to put the bomb Thunderhulk back in their hand. Oof, alright. Well then, now we're all in on getting in the sky here. We cannot break through the ground stuff. I can discover, or I can play a minecart. Minecart doesn't help me really through all the 1/1s on the ground, so I think we just discover and see what we find. I guess I can equip the pickaxe and discover if I sack both treasures. So we'll do that for 1 more potential damage. Oh, no. The Polani's Hatcher. Well, I have a tiny bit of graveyard recursion in this deck we could find. Bitter Triumph. Well, I mean, kill their only flyer, keep getting in with Phantom. I think that's reasonable. Alright, they can tap out for a ton of creatures on the ground, but that won't stop the Phantom from putting them down to 1. Yeah, there they go. That was a great discover. Send in the 4/4 here, going for the outrace. Ooh, yeah, I guess we are at the point where they are going to kill us by giving all these +1/+1. If I companion chump block the Thunderhulk and everything has +1/+1, we take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 next turn. Minecart we can crew with a fungus to help. Oh, Swarming Emergence. Pick up any permanent from our grave. I need the green source to do it, which means I have to attack first, so I can do this post-combat. I have many ways to kill them if I could do this pre-combat, but I have to do it post-combat. Okay. Well, put them to 1. And pick up the Hatcher for sure, just because it gives me the most blockers. It's still going to be 3 blockers total, even if they're 0 ones. And then Minecart's another blocker too. So we are very much not dead on board, but if they can kill our Phantom, then they still have more creatures than us, which means they will slowly win the game. Ooh, and Lodestone Needle does it. Stun the Phantom. 2 stun counters? Yeah, that is enough. Because now they're going to have 6, 7, 8, 9 creatures after they flip the bricks, and we're just going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that can block. And the Thunderhulk keeps making more when it attacks, which is insane. I think this does put them in the winning position for sure. Still have some outs we could draw into, I'm sure, but gonna need to draw well. Put some counters on this pre-combat to get more 1/1s, as you do. Yep, they just want to flip a million 1/1s. We'll kill the Thunderhulk again, but I'll have enough 1/1s to flip the bricks, give everything +1/+1, and kill me next turn, most likely. The only way to kill this would be to lose the Hatcher, and if I lose the Hatcher, the eggs don't turn into 3/3s anymore. So maybe I just trump with an egg. But if I just trump with an egg, that means they're going to get at least 6 more next turn, and if they flip this, they get 7 more. And I have to kill it here. And I lose both of the creatures that I double block it with. If I block with the Minecart or with the Companion, so we block with the Companion. Just leaves us dead next turn. So close here, but looks like we get got. Yep. I can explore, but that's not going to draw the next card. And just see what it was. Oh, really? I mean, I think that actually still puts them in a winning position if we would have cast that, right? Because then they could flip this into 2 2/2s and we would have nothing left. But they'd have 2 2/2s left. Immensely close game, but they are going to pull out the victory in the end just barely. And it's going to be 3-2 heading into round 6. And technically could have crewed and blocked 1 more, but that's still 12 damage. Here we are now for game number 6 with a sweet hand. Start off with that Deep Cavern Bat, see what's going on with our opponent's hand. We've got the Phantom to fuel the Squirming Emergence, which will be cool. Ooh, and now we can make our Flying Lifelink, or a 2/2 Flying Lifelink. So what do they have here? Green-blue deck. They've got a Larcenist. Oh, this thing sucks. This thing's so dang good. It's a 2/3 flyer ward 2 that turns one of my permanents into a treasure token as long as it's on board. For as long as it remains on the battlefield, the chosen permanents are just treasures that lose all other abilities. I'd still get to keep the card in exile though, so if I let them play Larcenist on my bat next turn, their final strike will still be exiled, and then I can just rock slide the Larcenist turn 4. But then they can Soul Coil Viper it back. Let's take the Larcenist and hold up Bitter Triumph when they're able to Watley's final strike. That might be the plan. Which means I don't get to do anything here but poke for 1, but goes back to their hand when it dies, right? Yeah. We really just need to top deck a land, then I can put the pickaxe on and hold up the Bitter Triumph still. Seeker of Sunlight. And they will seek. Find a Brackish Blunder. Dang it, now they have 2 pieces of interaction, one of which I can't counter with the Bitter Triumph. But now I can pickaxe hold up the Bitter Triumph. But they'll probably just put this back in my hand and get their token here. We'll see. Oh my god, they're gonna do it, okay. They're actually gonna do it. 20 here. With a Squirming Emergence, maybe we still discard like a Compass Gnome. It's not horrible. I think I paid the 3 though. They can still bounce the bat, but then I just recast it and retake the card, I guess. They could bounce their own Seeker to save it from our removal, but we still counter their removal spell by doing this. Awesome. Got green removal. Everyone was like, they made green removal good? No, it still sucks. Green removal will always suck. Outrace a 2/2 flying lifelinker, nerd. Oh, I should have played the Compass Gnome this turn. I don't know why I thought I'd be attacking right now to get my treasure token. You fool, you absolute buffoon, Goblet. Ooh, River Herald Guide on top. Okay, they've got the Soul Coil to reanimate something, but they're just going to have an Akawali engrave to reanimate. Because I'm going to rock slide that thing. Ooh. I have changed my game plan. So we just take 4. But this stops the Soul Coil from getting in. And then we can rock slide next turn. This instant speed? No, the Viper is sorcery speed. That's good. Okay. 1 treasure token means we'll have 3 mana up post-combat to play a Screaming Phantom to start self-milling to fuel the emergence. That feels good to me. Probably should have done this in the other order. Should have still done the Rock Slide and then the Hatcher. These last 2 turns. Since I'm not ending up attacking with it anyway. Eaten by Piranhas. Loses all abilities and it's just a 1/1? Alright. Well, And bring it back with Squirming Emergence eventually. And we still got a 3/3 out of it, luckily. Skullcap Snail, that's a good one when they have one card in their hand. I'm just going to do that immediately. They have to exile a Jadelight Spelunker. Oh, brutal for our opponent. Send in the team. I've got my chump blocker at the ready for next turn. I guess I could have gone for like a wombo combo there of using the Compass Gnome to guarantee that I had a land on top, so I had a permanent for the Phantom, but we hit a land anyway, so we're fine. It all worked out in the end, but that would have been fancy. 6/6 Dreadmaw, no other dinos on their board. They're at 6, taking 4 in the sky. They block here, take 1 more. They go to 1, but they're not dead. So I'll just discover here. I'm gonna put that in my hand, thank you. I don't think I'm gonna cast that right now. The one time that Discover letting you put it into your hand instead of casting it is actually pretty awesome. Not gonna Emergence for a 4-drop, I'm waiting for 1 more to get the Hatcher back. Although maybe... No, it's just an Appraiser, and we wouldn't be casting the Appraiser, so it would literally just be to emerge a 3/2. Which is not great. And our opponent's tapped out. Looks like they are just going to die to some flyers. Oop. And end the game. We are now 4-2 heading into round 7. Here we are now on the play for game number 7. We need to hit a black source badly, or we don't do anything. I think that justifies a mulligan here. Alright, this is much more consistent. Go Pickaxe into Militia. Probably just turn 3 Pickaxe and Equip. Actually just play Necropolis turn 1. Yeah, Necropolis, Mountain, Militia. You know what? Actually, I ditch... Ditch Necropolis, then I can go Pickaxe, then Compass Gnome to guarantee a land the turn after. Then I can equip, get a treasure, play Militia. This is probably greedy, but I do like having that Discover banked for later, so I'm just going to turn 3 spend the whole turn on Pickaxe onto Gnome, I think. It'll land anyway, so we'll grab our green source. Well, the Pickaxe, we probably don't need it. Maybe better to hit another black source here. I'm still going to hit the green source. Pirate Hat with no creatures on board. It's Pickaxe time. Let's start mining. It's Minecraft time. We yearn for the mines. Reintroduce child labor. Minecraft is the #1 children's game. Let us return to the mines. Alright, 1/4 means we won't be hitting them with the gnome anymore, but we'll still be getting treasure, which is great. Let's see what's going on in their hand. Whoa, Abuelo, Petrify, Adaptive Gem Guard, Thousand Moon Smithy, and a Brine Fang. This thing creates a creature with power toughness equal to the number of artifacts and creatures they have. And they can tap 5 things to flip this and keep making more every time they cast an artifact or creature. Probably the Thousand Moon Smithy is the pickup here. They don't have the 2nd white mana for it yet, but if they top deck a Plains and cast that, we're super doomed. The other cards we can actually try to outrace. Yeah, that thing's insane. We exile that for sure. Get my treasure. Although I'll probably just pop it for militia this turn anyway. They are not going to attack. I mean, they could for 1 damage, but it's definitely worth tapping the whole board there for the militia. This card has been so stupid. So easy to have an equipment or a treasure sitting around. It's really good with the pickaxe. Alright, Island Cycle of Brine Fang. Maybe Petrify our militia this turn. Mana efficiency. Petrify the militia it is. Sunbird Standard. I think I would rather just be playing cards that immediately impact the board. So we throw the pickaxe onto the flyer to drain for 2 life, actually hit them for some damage, and then play the companion this turn, which I don't have the mana to play and put a and sack the map until after I declare an attack and get a treasure token, so we just do it post-combat. And I think I just still use the map next turn rather than right now, so that I don't have to sack a treasure to do it. There's Abuelo. So we are hoping for a non-land on top to buff the Deep Cavern Bat. Let's see what we get. Right. Oof. Hit the land, no attack then. Move the equipment over by sacking the treasure here. I think I need to do that though. Just pass. So I can craft my militia into this and have a 1/1 flying vigilance haste, but gotta wait till we've got some more stuff of other colors in our graveyard. Get at least a 2/2 off the Sunbird thing. They're gonna equip Abuelo. It doesn't have vigilance, so I would not hate to see it attack. Okay, it does not attack. Ooh, find Squirming Emergence. We need to fill the grave bad. Gotta find one of our self-mill cards here. I guess I could sack one of these lands to discover. Puts 1 permanent in the grave. Not a permanent that matters for the standard. We gotta find removal for this Gym Guard. Guess I don't need it immediately. I can spend the turn on the Gnar for now. And then I can set up to put the pickaxe on that. Attack as a 6/3. Suppose they could trade with the Nautilus then, because they can do the +3/-3, but this discovers when it dies, so I don't think any trades are super bad for the Gnar. We probably just start chumping all over the place if they start attacking because of our Squirming Emergence in hand and our standard on board. There we go. Screaming Phantom can start filling that grave. Play this and equip, and now I've got a 3/3 flyer to attack into their 3/3 flyer. And it fuels my graveyard as well. In fact, I want to fuel the grave so much, I will send in the Gnar as well. Trade into the Nautilus, I'm fine with it, because we discover when we do it and put a permanent in our graveyard. Oh, they're just going to flicker it? Fair enough. Fair enough. Guess that is another use of Abuelo. Just infinite blocks. No! Thunderhulk is such a gross card, as we saw earlier today. Tremendously massive problem. And they can just keep flickering it with Abuelo. Ooh, we need removal. We need to top deck removal, or we need to discover removal. That's not removal, so we're going to have to discover it. I need 2 mana to pay for Abuelo's Ward. If it's removal, that can only kill Abuelo, but not the Thunderhulk. I'm pretty sure all our removal spells could kill either. But if I attack with Phantom before I discover, then I'll have the treasure to pay for Abuelo's Ward after discovering off of the nursery, or the necropolis, or whatever. Alright, we did mill a permanent, which is good for emergence. And with the treasure tokens and the standard, it doesn't matter too much which one we sack, but I'll sack Necropolis to keep a natural green source for emergence. Removal, removal, removal. A bitter triumph, baby. Let's kill the Thunderhulk, I think. Let them keep Abuelo. And I think I could actually just discard Minecart and buff up the emergence. But at 22, it's probably still better to pay the life. Alright, great discover. This format is going to be fun for all those little RNG plays. Where it's like, come on, cave, find me a goodie. Alright, we need to not die to a cave, not a cave, a gem guard. About to call it a cave guard. But I can just keep chumping it. For a very long time. Okay, now I have a black and a red card for the standard. So we just want a green card for it. So whenever I use Squirming Emergence, we'll have black, red, and green, and this turns into a 3/3 on the back half. So 10 power, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 if I block with everybody, but then they get the 1000 Moon Smithy back, which is horrible. Well, Nar's never attacking in. We're only sending it in the sky anyway, so let's just get the block that lets us discover. Even if it's our biggest blocker. I'm cool with it. I like spinning the lottery wheel. Whoa! Hey, Skullcap Snail. When they have one card in hand, that's a good discovery. Oh man, that's another thing that's going to be sweet about this format. Once it like fully comes out and deck trackers are working, you can get to the point where you've drawn enough 2-3 mana cards that sometimes you might know exactly what you'll discover into. What did we exile? Didact Echo? The RNG is so in our favor today. There's a Terror Tide. That's not good though. We kill everything but Gem Guard pretty much, and then the Gem Guard goes to town on our face. That's not ideal. Yeah. Send in the 3/3 over and over. Keep doing that. Milled another red card, a Gold Fury Strider, which is actually really good right now. That's actually so good right now. If I put one more permanent in my grave to emergence it up, that'll be awesome. So maybe crack a land just to do that soon. 1, 2, 3. I'd have to crack one treasure token, but I have enough left over. I think I do that so I can emergence the Strider next turn. Buff both my flyers and probably just find lethal. Souls of the Lost. Well, that's a sweet one too. Could sack a permanent to play this, so sack the Militia. Just discovering all day long. Now, I probably still should have discarded the Minecart, because while I couldn't use Militia's ability, I could still tap it towards the 5/6 thing. But now I can reanimate the Militia, so there is that as an option. Okay. They're at 7 life. I can force the Abuelo chump here by picking up the big sun thingy-mabob. If I pick up the Militia, I can shoot for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 is not 7 damage. I guess I can go for post-combat militia to win out of nowhere. That might be the play. That's probably the play. Ooh, milled my other bitter triumph. Madness. Alright, cool. We did it. Now we emerge the militia. Shoot for 4. There is the concession. We are 5-2, heading into round number 8. Last round was just our opponents playing chess while I'm in the corner, just sitting on the slot machines and getting rewarded. Super fun game of Magic. Alright. I almost definitely shouldn't keep this hand, but if I draw any land, I get to play the Appraiser, and when we get a green source, we play the Hatcher, so I'm gonna keep it. It's my 2 favorite cards in the deck. We're going for it. Come on, top deck. Literally any land. Ideally an untapped land, if we hit it on turn 4. Companion helps. Use the map token to explore, and now we have a 3-drop we can cast no matter what we hit. Our opponent is starting off with Ramp on the play. A turn 2 mana dork means they're going to be very far ahead in terms of the mana value of the spells they're casting. They'll cast a 4-drop here while I only have 2 lands on board. So we will need to be able to recover a lot to stabilize. Luckily, the Journal doesn't really do anything till late game. It's super scary late in the game. But for now, it's kind of a slow card draw engine that can sack their map tokens, treasure tokens, and stuff to draw cards. The huge power of this is late in the game when they don't have any cards in hand anymore, they can flip this and just start recasting all their creatures from their grave over time. So card is really strong. But not like instantly, immediately impactful. It's a very grindy, war of attrition kind of value play. That is going to win the long game for our opponent if we can't find some good threats quickly. And our opponent's just gonna pass turn. Alright, map token. I need lands here. Well, I don't know what the odds are here. They're not super high. But that is still mana for me for the Geological Appraiser at worst. Would have been much better if it was either of our other colors, though. But we did keep the triple mountain hand. Alright, for cycle a Bristleback, there are a few reanimation spells in the format. So if they have one of those, we are about to get demolished. Because they'll pick this up from their graveyard, have a 5/5 and a 3/3 on board next turn. That would be quite bad for me. Join the Dead. They're going to cast Premium Removal on our 2/1, and I'm very okay with that. Here's a Cavern Stomper. Basically our last shot now to get some mana. I'll have to Bitter Triumph the 7/7 to not insta-die, and even then, they're getting very close to being able to just flip the Journal and start casting their dinos from graveyard instead. Alright, well, find me something, Appraiser. Where's the swamps? There were 3 more red sources in the top 7? So Appraiser has done a lot of work digging towards the next swamp here, and the Bitter Triumph, obviously, is a good hit. So, incredible work from the Appraiser there, but I'm getting scared, because that means that was like the top 20 cards of our deck at that point. The top 14 plus the 6 we saw there. Yeah, literally top 20, there were 0 black sources. I mean, that means the odds are getting higher and higher each draw step of us actually finding the swamp. We did put our 1 natural green source on the bottom of our deck there, unfortunately, but we've got cards that can get a mana of any color that we could still find. Treasure tokens, mostly. Alright, Jade Seed Stones. That's a 4/4 Poison Dart Frog now, and this is very easy to flip later. 7 mana, exile a creature from grave, get a 7/7 and gain some life. Although, not a great combo with the Journal, since they're exiling a creature from grave. I guess they can just sack it to the Journal to draw a card, since if they spend 7 to get a 7/7, they might as well just spend 6 and cast the 7/7 from grave anyway. So yeah, they probably just sack it to the Journal to draw a card here. Since they can flip the Journal and recast creatures from grave instead of exiling creatures from grave. But who knows? Well, I mean, we really won the lottery last game, and now we're really losing the lottery. This is getting pretty absurd, statistically speaking. Now we ditch... definitely a black spell. Probably the Bat with their smaller hand at this point. Mycoid's a 4/3 blocker, which is big enough to trade into this Dart Frog, so I don't want to ditch that. It's Bat or the Souls of the Lost here. Souls of the Lost will be really big later, but not yet. I'm going to ditch the Bat. Ooh, Throne of the Grim Captain. They have to have a Dinosaur, Merfolk, Pirate, and Vampire in their deck, but if they do, they can keep milling with the Throne, and then they can craft all 4 together into this unbeatable Grim Captain. So it's really hard to get there to have a Dinosaur, Merfolk, Pirate, and Vampire on your board or in your grave, but the payoff is really there. A 7/7 Menace, Trample, Lifelink, Hexproof that makes your opponent sack a permanent every time it attacks and spits one of the crafted cards onto the battlefield attacking. It basically insta-wins the game if you flip it. It's a super fun card. They only have dinosaurs right now, though, so they'll just keep milling, filling the graveyard for the flipped journal to cast more creatures from grave or for the seed stones to craft something. But still good for that. Just a bunch of self-mill here. Alright, flip that journal so they can start casting creatures from their grave. And mill a bunch of cards with the throne to get more creatures in the grave. No attack from our opponent. Could have given this death touch, so that's fine. We found the black source. We did it, everybody. We did it. So, now I can kill the poison dart frog, and then next turn they just recast something from grave. I won't have removal for it. But it's not going to have haste or anything. So they're just going to cast a 7/7 from grave. Actually, they'll probably cast a 5/5 and a 3/3. Oh. This is going to be a problem. Maybe I play Screaming Phantom to buff our Descend cards to be better. We start playing those. I could play Mycoid and get a Fungus in the end step. Yeah, I suppose I shouldn't Bitter Triumph a 4/4 if they're about to play a 5/5 or a 7/7. Sure. Let's... Mycoid's pretty great with the Strider. Let's do that here. And it's also big enough to trade into the Dart Frog if they attack with that. Could see a pretty good argument for going for the Phantom there, too. So we can keep filling the grave so Souls of the Lost is big enough to block basically anything they play. Just get the Souls of the Lost to the point that it's a 7/8, and they shouldn't be able to attack in if we can do that. But if we get the Mycoid out, we can also just have that sack fodder for Souls of the Lost, which is pretty nice. So I don't have to actually discard a card for this. Alright, they're just going to flip the Seed Stones, get a 7/7, gain 4, play land for turn. Okay. I can block a 7/7 with a 5 toughness and 3 toughness card and only lose one of the two, which is quite nice. I think it is worth it to get another black source to be able to play 2 black spells in one turn. So I'm going to Compass Gnome into another black source. Any merfolk or vampires or anything? Nope. All dinos still. We need the untapped black mana to immediately cast 2 spells. So, maybe Screaming Phantom here. If we clear out the Poison Dart Frog, they have no other reach or flyers available to them even. You can try to rely on that. Plus, of course, the Phantom fueling the Souls of the Lost to be a big enough blocker on the ground is big too. Probably spend this next turn chump blocking with a Compass Gnome. Which means it might be worth it if I'm just chumping this with a Compass Gnome next turn. Then I guess I can only buff something once with the Strider. Yeah, so it's actually not worth it. I was gonna say maybe I could try to make the Strider like 7 power and attack in with it, but I'd have to tap 4 things to do that. And I only have 3 things to tap, right? Because I have to tap the Mycoid to attack, so I have these 3 I could tap, since I need to leave the Compass Gnome untapped for the chump block. Okay. Here's the chump block. Fill the graveyard. 4 Souls of the Lost. Now I can cast the Snail, since they didn't play a card from hand this turn. And hold up the Bitter Triumph, probably. See what we get to exile. We have exiled a Stinging Cave Crawler. Alright, got an on-land card. Cool with that. I can Bitter Triumph the Poison Dart Frog and then chump with the Snail. I think that's fine. I do need to double chump, because they have 2 7/7s now, though. And if I kill the Dart Frog, they can just bring it back with the Tomb, because they can give it Death Touch for 2 mana, so it's still going to be a problem for our Screaming Phantom in the future. 19 cards over there. I still think I really want to do this here. Oh, I can't sacrifice a permanent for this one. Hold up. I have to pay 3 or discard a card. I'd have to discard the Hatcher on this. Maybe it's not worth it here then. I can buff the Phantom with Fungus and Snail. Attack into the 4/4. Sure, let's buff the Phantom, I guess. Do this. Into the Dart Frog on attacks. Got a chump blocker and a removal spell up. Mill a land, so we get another little fungi. And they don't block. Alright, love to see that. Probably our plan for getting through the Dart Frog is just constantly attack with this as a 4-power creature then. 6/7 Souls of the Lost. 7/8 is a pretty important stat line. Let's sack the Snail to get there. No, let's sack a land to get there. What am I on about? Boom, 7/8 Souls of the Lost. And I have a 7/8 to block their 7/7s. Okay. Canonized in Blood is the draw. So they can turn that into a 4/3 flyer for another blocker for our Phantom. And they're going to cast the Bristleback this turn. They don't have the mana for the Bristleback. Yeah, they don't have the mana for the Bristleback, so just chill for now. Oh, they do get a +1/+1 counter every turn as well, because they do have the mill to descend every turn. Shoot. So now they can make their stuff an 8/8 in the end step, and we'll have to keep getting more permanents in our graveyard to keep our Souls of the Lost big enough to block. Find a hidden necropolis. I like being able to discover with that, but I also like being able to discard that to Bitter Triumph because I really don't want to shoot myself for 3, but the Discover's probably more than worth it to shoot myself for 3 if I need to. Let's see if we can get an 8th permanent engrave. I mean, if they trade into the Phantom, that works. But there we go. We hit an 8th permanent for the Souls of the Lost. They are not trading with the Poison Dart Frog, so we just get some more damage in. Beautiful. We triggered the Descend for the Mycoid. Super, super solid stuff. Mill 2. They hit a bat. That's a great card to recast here. Wow. So they get to exile my Hatcher until the bat dies, or exile my Bitter Triumph till the bat dies, but they just cast a Bristlebrack, so we don't have to worry about the bat. That's nice. Hold up a second. They're at 13. 1, 2, 3. I can give +6/+0 to the Phantom, not enough to kill them in the sky. But they can't block the Phantom at all next turn, so we just go for damage here, which is going to be really nice. Cool stuff. Oh. Hello there, 7/7 trample. I don't have my green source, though. Do I have the mana to crack Necropolis and Bitter Triumph? No, I'm 1 mana away. Probably Bitter Triumph to be safe then. Okay. Hit for 6, they can't block, then we just kill their 1 reach creature and kill them in the sky with the Phantom next turn, if they don't recast their bat from grave. Join the Dead. Target our Souls of the Lost. -10, -10. If I discard a permanent to Bitter Triumph, this is 11. And it doesn't die, so it's a chump blocker. We stop some damage. 3 chump blockers. Chump, chump, chump. 4/4 and a 3/3. I'm gonna do it here. Targeting the Dart Frog to try to represent lethal with a flyer on the crackback. I guess they can just recast the Dart Frog, but... Let's see. What is that? Oh, when it dies, bring it back. I think it comes into play tapped, though, right? Yeah, hits the board tapped. That's excellent. So still no flying blockers. They have to recast their bat here. But they don't have a black source untapped, since they spent it to save the frog. And I think we get there. I think this is the lethal Phantom in the sky. We have to keep the Strider around. Oh, it's not going to be the lethal Phantom in the sky because we can't keep the Strider around. Oh wait, no, yeah, we can. I can take 5. Boom, go to 3. But I could just kill him with all the funguses anyway, all the fungi. Okay, ooh, Terror Tide for good measure if they somehow don't die. Oh my god, alright. That was a stressful one, a long one. Took a very long time to find the black source, but once we did, we got some insane Descend shenanigans going. And we do, by the skin of our teeth, find the victory in the end at 3 life here. We are now 6-2 heading into the final battle. Here we are now for the final battle, the final boss, win or lose, as we are 6-2 in this event. We're going to have to take a mulligan with this opening hand. I did keep a mono red hand last time, but that was with 3 out of the 4 mana I needed for the Appraiser. Not going to do it this time around. Let's get that mulligan in here. Now we've got both of our main colors. We have a minecart to try to get treasures towards the Hatcher. We will need something to crew it with, though. Probably ditch the Terror Tide or the Rock Slide here and hope to find some lands and cheap creatures. It's pretty sketchy considering the curve doesn't start till 3 and the 3-drop doesn't even work without a creature, but I think it's good enough to not mulligan to 5 at least. But if this were our opening 7, I'd probably mulligan again, but I think we keep it as the 6-card hand. I am gonna ditch the Terror Tide. We don't have any good fuel for Descend in this hand, so even if we're in a position where we need a board wipe, this just isn't actually gonna wipe the board until very, very late in the game. So we are on the draw here, which can be helpful. Hopefully find us our mana and our cheap threats. There's our mana. Spiketail finds the 3rd land for us off the swamp cycling. So we can definitely get the minecart down turn 3, and hopefully we top deck a mountain, and then I can crew and attack with the minecart on turn 4 by crewing it with Appraiser. I guess I should hold up Bitter Triumph in case they play some kind of 3-mana bomb rare, like the red-white rare that spits out a bunch of gnomes and stuff. But we're probably swamp cycling in the end step here. It's just good to have the removal spell up if we need it. Since both these effects are instant speed. Clay-fired bricks. Alright, we don't need the removal spell then. Well, I mean, maybe they'll play the best 1 white mana spell ever printed. And we kill that, but I doubt it. Nope. Alright. Swamp cycle it up. Drawn to a skull cap snail. That's pretty perfect, because now, even if we do not hit the red source for the Appraiser, we can play a 1/1 to crew the minecart with. So very happy to see that. Artifacts enter the battlefield under our control tapped. And they can sack this to kill our minecart for 7 mana. A white, and then X equals 3 would be an additional 6. They can also use it to blow up all of our treasure tokens for just 1 mana, but they'd have to sack the Dismantler to do that. So, can only cast Snail or Triumph here since we have a tap land. But I think it's cast the Snail. Even if I get a tapped treasure here, a tapped treasure is still valuable for next turn to get the Hatcher down. Or the Appraiser. We will be running the minecart into a 1/4. It's not going to deal any damage here, but it's going to give us a treasure. So we're still doing it. We need that mana. Alright, exile a plains from their hand. Let's get Donkey Kong Country up in here. Just careen on in. Even if they kill it now, it's already gotten the 1 treasure token that we really need. And they do kill it now. That's fine. They get their own vehicle off this later in the game. Yep. Alright, that is a 2-for-1 removal spell, so it's a little less fine. Any 1-for-1 removal spell we would have been perfectly happy with since we got our treasure out of the card anyway. But this is a 2-for-1. It's a removal spell and they get a big vehicle off of it. later when they craft. Alright, take 3 damage down to 13. There's a Brood Rage Mycoid, no Descend trigger, just a 4-3. Alright, I think you all know what we're doing here. We're going to get a 3-3 and a 5-3 and pass the turn with all this stuff up on blocks. Little unfortunate to have to spend the treasure here and not have another red for Appraiser later, but we have a lot of red sources in this deck, as we saw last game, so we can definitely draw into a second red source for Appraiser later. Just use some removal for now. Alright, let's stabilize this board state. Our opponent still has excellent value later in this game, getting a couple more 1/1s buffing their whole board. So we're not ahead in card advantage, even off Polani's Hatcher. The game's still looking pretty even here. There's a Tinker's Tote, which is incredible with those cards that need to craft an artifact, because they can craft with the tote itself from their graveyard, because you can craft from grave. And then they can just craft the other one with like a 1/1 on the board, so both of these will be flipped later in the game. Okay. So, another Necropolis means we can start just discovering off of these if we don't find another red source. Probably pretty reasonable to kill the Mycoid, that's definitely their best threat on the board right now. That leaves them with only 3 power out, but that's still enough to kill Hatcher on blocks. I don't think I'm attacking in here, but I do think we clear out the Mycoid. Yeah, I mean, they just block Hatcher with a 2/1 and a 1/1. We're chilling. I mean, we could get them to spend the 2/1 to trade the 2/1 off without exiling anything from graves or discovering it all, which there is a slight argument towards that, since the Hatcher's already got all of its value. Still don't know that it's the best trade ever, though. Oh, another Mycoid. Alright. That'll be pretty good. They'll descend next turn when they sack their Necropolis. Another fungus. Ooh, hoo-hoo. Terror Tide? Well, that's our game plan now. We draw anything, we just keep it in our hand towards trying to win off a Terror Tide. So the trades are the same for the Hatcher. It's 2/1 and a 1/1. Well, no, they can triple block with a 1/4 and 2 1/1s. I'm incorrect, and then I trade into a 1/4 and a 1/1, which is not beautiful. But with a Terror Tide coming up, and this Hatcher not actually doing anything anymore, maybe okay. Let's see what we get off Necropolis. Could change our line. I'm not going to try to like get a Bitter Triumph trick on this attack. I'll save that for post-board wipe. Ooh, Akawali. Now I am pretty cool with the trade. We'd get Descend going to make this a 5/5 trample. Yeah, there is some inherent value in just getting another permanent into our graveyard for this Seething Tower. So let's jam. And any 1/1s we kill, we're stopping them from being 2/2s later. So it's kind of like trading into a couple 2/2s instead. 1-for-1 trade into Mycoid is reasonable. I think those are pretty equally valuable cards. Actually, Mycoid's probably better at this point. A 5/3 with no abilities trading into a 4/3 that might be spitting out a fungus every turn. I think that's a favorable trade. Terror Tide is up to -4/-4, which will wipe the entire board, but we definitely don't want to pop it until they've flipped their bricks, which is such a funny saying. I love clay-fired bricks in this format so much just because it's going to get so many people to say flip their bricks. No! Alright, well, they get the Conservator Exile here, which is actually super bad for us. Exile 4 cards from our grave and discover, and now the Descend. has failed and Terror Tide is super far away. That's very depressing. And this Cave Crawler is also a really good hit for them, but it just trades into one dinosaur, draws them one card. Sunbird Standard. Interesting. I guess I don't have the mana to crack this Necropolis, so that's all I can do here is play the Standard and hold up a Bitter Triumph. 13 life here. Pay 3 to kill the Cave Crawler. Might be fine. But I'll just hold on to this for now. So there's a red card in the grave for the craft. They exiled everything else. If they didn't have the exile card, this would be a 3/3 flying Vigilance Haste. It entered the battlefield tapped though, because the Dismantler, but Dismantler actually looking sweet here. It's made a lot of stuff hit the board tapped, and it's always just threatening to trade off into a good artifact later. It'll trade into the flipped Sunbird effigy, which I think will still technically be mana value 3, so they'll have to spend 7 to do it, but they can trade into the 3/3 flying Vigilance Haste thing. Okay, so their whole board's going to get +1/+1, which is going to make it so the Cave Crawler trades into 2 of our creatures while drawing them a card, so it might be worth a Bitter Triumph here. But getting the Snail into the grave adds to our Descend, so I think I'm still cool with that. Oh wait, they exiled a card from grave, so this doesn't even draw them a card off the attack anymore. Interesting. Well, in that case I could Bitter Triumph it before they even draw a card off of it, also. But no, I think I'm still on the fine 2-for-1 trade there. Alright, I need more permanents in the grave for Terror Tide to do anything, so sure, I'm extending into my own board wipe, but I think it's worth appraising it up. Ooh, Souls of the Lost, let's go. Let's sack a permanent. Sack the Snail. All right, we've got the hookup on the blocks. If they descend again, we better triumph the Cave Crawler at this point, since I did just sack my 1/1, so I no longer have a good double block for Crawler. I can't go 3/3 and 1/1 on it. To combat they go. There a trick that gives the whole board +1/+1? These are sorcery speed things. Oh, there is a trick that gives the entire board +1/+1, and that is super gross here, and I can't do anything about it. I guess I can fill the grave for Terror Tide, at least, if that is the play. So we, like, trade here. They +1/+1, we trade there as well. That's 2 more permanents to my grave. This is -3/-3 now. This turns into 3/4. If I keep the Souls of the Lost around, it will always be big enough to survive Terror Tide. Yeah, I mean, we trade most of our board into the +1/+1 trick, but the other option is to take basically lethal. Yeah, it's 1 and a white for an instant, +1/+1 to everybody, or hexproof to everybody. Oh. So it's not that trick. Maybe it is something that gets value for each permanent that died this turn. It's that flanker thing. Oh, it's their own Terror Tide. That's cute. If I discard Diamond Pickaxe to my Bitter Triumph, I'll get to keep my Souls of the Lost on the board here, but not my Aquali. Seems worth, though. Oh wait, no, I won't. Hold up. I actually don't know how this works. This is already on the stack. Does this check when they cast her, when it resolves? So is it guaranteed 3, or if I kill something before it resolves, does it up the check and go to 4? That actually matters a lot. I guess we find out. I think it's going to check after. I think it's going to still do -4/-4 now. Yeah. Alright, so they have a single 2/4, and then we flip our standard here. Still fine, and I have a board wipe backup. So they could flip their vehicle, and they have a 5/5, actually. Shoot, that's pretty bad. Because I can't kill a vehicle with the Terror Tide. Dang it. Dang it. Take 7 next turn? I guess only if they play another artifact. If they play another artifact, I take 8 next turn. Because they can crew this by tapping 2 artifacts. Or if they top deck a creature, I take 8. I can discover a random card or play a tapped 3/3. Guess I'd rather try to get an untapped card. That's a tapped card. This Dismantler's done so much work. Well, I can crack the map token. Nope, the map hits the board tap 2. I cannot. Happy to figure out how the whole Terror Tide interaction works during the early access when I'm not paying with my own gems here, so we won't make that mistake in the future. But now that we know that it checks on resolution and not on cast, we know in the future I would have just held on to my removal spell and then Terror Tided. They're 2/5 and they're 2/4. This way we get to Terror Tide the big flyer, so that's cool. But they also top deck the creature to insta-crew the chariot, so that's bad. And if they hit any creature or artifact to crew the chariot, I'm going to have to chump block next turn now, which I can't do because I have to kill my companion here to kill these two. So if they top deck an artifact or creature, we're dead. And they can discover into one as well. And there's nothing I can do about that. We don't have an alternate line because the other path we can take here is to play a tapped creature and then die in the sky. So I have to Terror Tide and hope that they don't top deck an artifact or creature for this chariot at this point. Yeah, this game was probably pretty winnable if I knew how the Terror Tide interaction was going to work, and we still had the instant speed removal in hand to blow up the chariot with that. 4 mana for Terror Tide, I have 2 mana left otherwise, which is not enough to flip the Sunbird thing, so let's just use the map, attack for 2, play the Terror Tide. We might attack for 3 by using the map first. Well, keep that Geological Appraiser. So if they don't hit a creature or an artifact on the top of their deck or off of this Discover 4, then we're back in it. We get 2 creatures off this one card, probably. But they are incredibly likely to hit a creature or an artifact when they get to top deck and then discover a non-land permanent. So they're guaranteed to cast their first non-land card in their deck. So that non-land card needs to not put a creature or artifact on the board. And it's just an immediate Cartographer's Companion, which does both, so super dead here. Unfortunate way to end it. Again, I think this was winnable if we had kept onto the removal, but I really wanted to see how the Fathomless Descent interaction worked there. If it was one of those kind of spells that checked on resolution or checked on the cast, how many permanents were in the graveyard. And it checks on resolution, so we get destroyed. If we still had the removal to kill Chariot, and I played well enough to just hold on to our board wipe so that we'd have it for the flyer, then we'd still be at like probably 5+ life here. when we drop the Appraiser next turn, and I think we could stabilize from there, but did not know the Terror Tide interaction and get punished for it. 6 and 3. Super close to a 7-win run and probably could have got there with perfect lines, but still a great run overall, and this was a very fun sealed pool and a very solid deck. We got to do some really cool things with this one, getting some massive graveyards in the late game sometimes to do big squirming emergence things. Picking up that Polani's Hatcher that one time was really awesome. There was that one game that we were just spinning the wheel over and over. We discovered with like 2 Appraisers and a Nursery and a Necropolis. So while the Discover RNG was great, and our super efficient removal was very helpful with the double bitter triumphs, so that kind of stuff. It was pretty awesome. Very, very fun deck today, and the format has been shaping up to be super interesting and super fun. And yeah, just absolutely loving it so far. But that is going to end today's video. As always, I'd like to thank my patrons and YouTube members for their support, as well as you for watching the video. If you enjoyed this video and you're interested in seeing more, you can always like, comment, and subscribe to tell the YouTube algorithm to send you some more in your recommended feed. If you'd like to catch me live, you can check out the Twitch channel in the link in the description below. And if you'd like to support the channel directly, you can check out the Patreon link in the description below. But other than that, as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again soon for some more Magic Arena.